London, 1890. The time had finally arrived. The time to start my own wizarding adventure and trust my new mentor, Sir Eleazar Fig, and embark into this magical cart. Direction, Hogwarts. And perhaps just like you, I basically grew up alongside Harry Potter, and even if I cannot call myself the biggest fan out there, I was still curious to start exploring all the corners of this open world that looks so promising and beautiful. This is a review of my journey as a brand new and freshly crafted 5th-year student in Hogwarts Legacy, and my experience as a somewhat casual player, an experience I must admit was not perfect, though quite enjoyable. And it is high in the clouds that I realized it would not only be a standard years of witchcraft and potion-making classes, as this guy here, George, brought a mysterious magical artifact to our attention. An artifact that would have something to do with a new threat amongst the magical world, a goblin named Ranrock. And just by the look of his face, I immediately assumed that it was a real threat, and not a simple gobbledygook, whatever that means. And as to make sure to definitely hook me to the game, there was a dragon. Yes, it's that easy to grab my attention. So the main quest started, which basically involved the discovery of an ancient form of magic that apparently we're the only one to see and control, and for the next 2 hours of my life I was stuck into the quite long tutorial of this game. Starting in an awesome abandoned castle on Scotland's shore, where I learned the basics of Hogwarts Legacy controls and spell casting, while witnessing some wonderful spell animation. Followed by a tour of Gringotts Bank, which led into the discovery of the most useful spell in the game.
Revelio, 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 Revelio.
I use that a lot. And while I was slowly becoming a novice wizard, I also learned that not only was I a special boy who could use powerful unknown magic, but also, and sort of against my will, I was beginning a series of trials created by a group of wizards called the Keepers, who had wanted to keep secret their hidden knowledge about the so-called ancient form of magic. And they would only share it with some witch or wizard who could prove themselves worthy of it. Just like I hoped. And obviously, we were not the only one to seek that mysterious knowledge.
I have no patience for traitors.
Oh god, would I have loved to kill this nasty goblin right there, but I was no match for him. For the moment. And so this is more or less how the story started, and even though this tutorial was nice and visually attractive, I started to get annoyed by the fact that I was not allowed to manually save the game when I wanted, and felt sort of trapped in the game with no real way to leave without losing my progress. And my reality found this aspect much inconvenient, especially with young kids. But be reassured, you fellow busy people out there, those never-ending cutscenes are not a common thing once the tutorial part is finished. And that was just about to happen, as I was getting closer to the real game. Now who says Hogwarts says sorting hat? That weird yet mysterious talking hat that reads the minds of young students to impose them a place to live for the next 7 years of their life. Well, that thing will read your mind as well, and assign a house not based on what he reads, but only on your preferences. Just like Harry Potter. And just a moment later, I was now a proud Hufflepuff student, and I was finally free to move around at my will and explore this humongous and mythical castle. Hogwarts is so huge that after nearly 50 hours of game time, there are rooms I never entered, and I'm not only speaking of those I couldn't unlock. But what struck me the most was not the size of the school, but the amount of details put into each and every part of it. And those details goes from small things like this awesome tiny Quidditch stadium to the uncountable animated portraits hung in just about every room of the school, all the way to the castle architecture itself. How magical is this? But in contrast, I need to admit that I was not as pleased with the quality of interactions with NPCs. Some were good, but most of the choices made by the character didn't seem to change anything story-wise. Pretty much always ending with the same result, no matter the option chosen, which unfortunately result in a linear experience. Any kind of morality meter would have been a very nice addition and would have impacted my actions and decisions in a much different way. But all that didn't stop me from playing, and I spent the next few hours completing the first few quests, which were mostly tied to what is called the field guide. which is where all your progress is noted and also the only way to level up in this game. Given to you by Miss Weasley, the very nice and kind deputy headmistress, this guide will be filled either by finding field guide pages, which also reveal some nice lore surrounding the world, or by completing various challenges tied to combat, quest, or explorations. And believe me, there's a lot to do and find in Hogwarts Legacy. So much that even if I tried hard to focus on one task or quest at a time, I almost always got sidetracked trying to solve a puzzle or letting my curiosity lead me into a new room I never stumble upon. And yet I'm not speaking about the open world outside Hogwarts walls, which sometimes led me to hours long of wandering. As for puzzles themselves, I was pleased to find a lot of diversity, and I even discovered new ones after nearly 40 hours of playtime, and some were not that easy to resolve, just like this mysterious unicorn door, which I have yet to resolve. And like most games, these first few hours of discovery were magical. I got my hand on a decent wizard's hat, I met Peeves the poltergeist and did my first duel in a not-so-secret organization. But it was time to trade stones for grass, and slowly, I mean really slowly, I made my way to the well-known Hogsmeade. A laggy yet beautiful little town and hub of everything vendors related in this magical world. A place filled with life where you can steal in the face of shop owners without any consequences, and where the Revelio charm will have his moment of glory. And every Potterhead out there will love to explore all the mythic shops like Zonko's Tricks and Jokes and the famous Three Broomsticks pub. And just as I was telling my girlfriend that I would have loved a little bit more combat, a troll appeared out of nowhere, and this awesome foe will be the first of many bad guys to cross our path. And to my surprise, I discovered a much better combat system than expected. A system involving dodging, protection spells, and a nice ancient magic mechanic that added a layer of diversity. And even if the default keyboard controls were bad on PC, a little bit of customization did the trick, and I found myself enjoying most encounters going on. Every new spell learned also helped a lot with this diversity. Even more than that, once you unlock talent points, you can change the effect of some spells either to reduce their cooldown or to unleash the flames of hell all around yourself.
Incendio.
And this variability in skill choice kind of alleviate the lack of variability in type of foe. Believe me, you're going to fight a lot of spiders and furries, goblins and poachers, and for a game set into a magical world, I would have loved to fight a wider range of creatures. So my first trip to Hogsmeade was a dangerous one, and without spoiling too much of the story itself, it became clear that Renrock basically wanted me dead. The proud goblin didn't want a young student to interfere in his business, and it became our #1 nemesis. But that was just one part of our story, and even if the fate of humanity was on our tiny shoulders, it would have been frowned upon to skip classes and neglect our studies, isn't it? So I went back to Hogwarts to fulfill this dream of becoming a wizard. Or at least I tried to go back, as the map system, especially in the castle, is, let's say, not the most friendly thing to use. I mean, how am I supposed to know on which floor this foo flame will lead me?
Off on another adventure, are we?
And so continued my student journey, and from this moment I really felt like the game was opening up to me. I started to regularly learn new spells to the point where I had more than I could handle on my annoyingly small spell bar. I was introduced to more and more types of puzzles and collectibles like the Daedalian Keys, the Astronomy Tables, or the Merlin Trials, and I also started to accumulate a good bunch of side quests, some as simple as helping a poor Slytherin girl recover some lost family treasure deep into the cold water of the lower Hogsfield, and some way more complex like the series of quests regarding our friend Sebastian and Salazar's Slytherin Legacy, where you can unlock the unforgivable curse, which should not be used in any circumstances. Spiders don't count, right? Now amongst all those quests, there was one that introduced sneaking, and while I was not fond of this mechanic at first, it ended up being my favorite way to kill enemies later on just because of how effective it is. As long as you do not get caught. Eventually, going back and forth from side quest to main quest led me to Miss Weasley once more, and more precisely to her kind house elf Deke. And what he showed me was a game changer, the famous Room of Requirements, a room that changes according to your needs. This place acts a bit like your little customizable home where everything can be easily managed. At least everything related to crafting, gear upgrades and beasts. Because yes, just like Newt Scamander, you can catch and even breed magical creatures, supposedly to help them escape poachers. But honestly, every time I caught one I felt like I was destroying a family more than anything else. Anyway, this became a fun side game, and aside from that, it was also very useful, as taking care of your beast gives materials like feathers and fur, and those are used either for crafting or to upgrade and add traits to gears. After a full playthrough though, I need to admit that I never felt too weak or obliged to upgrade my gears for combat, but it sure helped. As for traits, well, there's little information on how exactly it affects spells. It just says things like increased damage or greatly increased damage, and I don't know about you, but I am used to more precise and detailed information on gear than that. Now, as strong as the call to constantly explore the open world was, I knew that if I wanted to finish the main story one day, I would have to focus on that aspect alone and get rid of all these distractions. And I was much pleased to follow that path, as the main story is built to drive you all around this gigantic world map. And flying on my broom or mounting this majestic hippogriff became my #1 way to travel, and it allowed for an even better visual experience. Once again though, the controls were not suited for a mouse and keyboard, and I would have loved to be able to use my mouse to go up and down so that I would not look drunk every time I tried to hit those damn balloons. And as the school year passed, so did the seasons, and I understood why there were so many pumpkins in the beginning of this game. The soundtrack even followed those seasons, so when the snow started falling, the holiday ambience really kicked in, and I suddenly felt much better. So slowly, my quest for the control of ancient magic advanced, and the keepers were more inclined to trust the boy that was becoming an accomplished spellcaster. I learned more about the reason behind the long-lasting war between wizards and goblins, and I took part in some of the best encounter of the game, which were those related to the story itself. And if the general fight were a bit easy, I could not say that when speaking of those big bosses. And suddenly, I was over with the main story, and generally happy with it, especially with the last fight that I won't spoil here. The game was far from done though, but I felt free to wander at my own pace for a while, going off to the lands I had not visited yet and allowing myself to explore every house, dungeon, ruin and poacher camps that attracted my attention. And I enjoyed the experience for a while. But we all have that moment where a game starts to get redundant, and even if I was finding new gear and a lot of gold, I had no more use for it. The only activities that stayed interesting were side quests, as those had more elaborate instances tied to them, and good lore that was fun to discover. And I came to the conclusion that Hogwarts Legacy is a good casual game, not extremely hard nor too easy, at least on normal difficulty. It lets you use your brain for puzzles and is extremely story-driven while being fantastic to look at. I do came across small bugs here and there, but nothing that really broke the experience. Though one thing did, and it's the annoying stutters mainly occurring during cutscenes that started approximately mid-game, but it seems to be an irregular problem amongst the players, so I would not go further than warning PC players that it might become an issue during your playthrough. So all things considered, I was pleased with my experience in Hogwarts Legacy, and if there weren't so many good games out there waiting to be played, I guess I would have spent way more time in this magical and beautiful world. My name is Jim, and like it's been said so many times in this world, wait for my haul for the next review.